Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Canvas Consultancy, episode number 42. On this Wednesday morning, June the 10th, if you're watching live, or if you're watching the replay, you can watch this at any time you like. Beauty of the technology and the internet. It's totally up to you. But if you are watching today, welcome and thank you for joining us. Please give us a comment below. Let us know where you are, what are you doing, what's happening on your Wednesday. And today we're talking about a range of different career pathways that you can take and the importance of trying a lot of different things and finding some common threads in the work you do. But to discuss all of that and more, I'll introduce you in just a moment to our guest, Warren, after this very quick introduction. Warren, good morning.
Good morning, Josh, and hi, everyone.
How are you today?
I'm going fine. Yeah, it's great. A little bit milder this morning than what it was yesterday.
Isn't it just? I'm feeling it, but I'm excited to be here and chat with you today. I love this topic, and I'm really excited to explore it. Potentially, I was thinking before we started, a good place to open with you might be to ask about your first steps outside of uni. And we'll dig into what you do and your history and everything like that. But when you left school, where did you go? What was that first step? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I left school or uni, or both.
Sorry. This is the only singular downside of speaking to Canadians a lot of the time is school and university are interchangeably in my mind. University, when you left university, where did you go?
No problem at all. That's fine. Yep, absolutely. So what I did honours psychology at uni, and then I ventured into the ANZ graduate program, and I was picked up with that, and I actually was there for about 18 months in the ANZ program. And it was interesting. I mean, many people sort of said, why are you in a big corporate when you studied psychology? And I got more interested in organisations and how people work within organisations. So I guess that was my stepping stone into the corporate sector, which I spent most of my time with. But that's how I started my career. Yeah, I guess my first job at least anyway. In fact, I actually work in a branch not far from here.
No way. So I'd love to know the answer to that question. Why psychology into ANZ? If you're out there and you're listening and you're studying psychology and you're wondering, I didn't know I could work for a big bank. How does that work?
Absolutely. Now, that's the key, because a lot of students still think that you need a commerce degree or an economics or accounting to get into the finance sector. No, absolutely not. The banks, to this day, absolutely, they will still take graduates from all disciplines. Art history, zoology, biochemistry, all end up in banks. And banks are quite popular employers, actually. They're in the news a lot lately, but of course they're very popular employers. And I entered the role, and I learned a lot, but I discovered it wasn't for me actually as a long-term career. For reasons. I mean, I guess there were certain aspects of it that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed dealing with customers, and because studying psychology, I felt that dealing with customers, you can understand how they're thinking, why they've walked in the branch, what sort of things are they thinking about. Asking them questions and so on about why they're banking here, or they're supposed to do a bit of on-selling, because ANZ expect you to do, push a Visa card or a MasterCard if they're going away or something like that. So depending on where you're working and the demographics of the people that were working in the branch, you have to sort of do certain things. But I sprung out of that. I mean, I really wanted to get into human resources. That was my key area I would like to have got into. So what ANZ is really, in that time, they actually said, look, you're going to spend some time in the retail branches, get to know the business, and then ultimately end up into the HR area. So for me, it wasn't fast enough. So I looked at an opportunity. It came up in Beeline, which is the Country Rail organisation here in Victoria. And I went straight into the HR area, into a recruitment role, working with a senior psychologist, which was great. And started doing coordinating aptitude testing for apprentices, and got involved in a whole lot of other stuff in terms of training and development. And I jumped around a lot there from there. So I don't know where you want me to stop or start, but that was my next job at ANZ. Yeah.
You're fine. Don't even think about it. I'll steer you around. Like that V-line, we'll keep us on the track. Warren, I'm interested in that. I'm interested in that idea when you're like, it wasn't happening fast enough, to paraphrase. When it sounds like you had a plan, and I know from some students they'll leave university, it's just like, a plan is a job, a plan is the rent being paid. Whereas it sounded like for you had a bit of more direction where you wanted to go, but then interestingly decided to change companies to get there sort of even faster. So I'd love to understand that, because I think when students graduate, Is it, I'm in a role that I don't really like, but maybe that next step up? I know I had that in engineering, and when I left, I was like, I don't know if I can really transform this from the inside. I think I do need to get outside the system. What happens when things don't always sticking to that plan that you might have?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, it was a rough time for a graduate in a branch environment. I think because what you're basically attached to a branch where staff were appointed to the branch, and they knew as a graduate you would just come in and leave them. You'd go, you'd disappear, and you'd also be paid more than they were. So you were red rag to a bull as soon as you walked in the place.
Oh wow! How's that for incentives being the wrong way around, isn't it? It's always self-fulfilling prophecy too. It's like you got to leave because the staff think you got to leave, and
and not only that, they're training you as well, which they don't even like. They hate training people who just walk out and leave them in the lurch. So I guess, I mean, I don't know how many other organisations maybe I guess you hit the ground running to some extent, but as a graduate you've got to have a certain amount of resilience because there will be some people who will look at you suspiciously a bit. I made my intentions clear to the management that I would like to work in human resources. I think the argument about the organisation has to deploy people depending on where the growth areas are and so on. And so they kind of steered me into the lending international area, which I kind of I didn't really enjoy all that much. And I think when they started to say that to me, I sort of saw the penny drop and thought, no, I'm going to wait too long before I get into a HR role here. I'll probably be put into a lending area and I won't like it, and I'll be just persevering. So I made the exit, clearly looking at organisations that were taking on people in HR. So I went into an entry-level role from ANZ, and that's how I got into the HR area.
Really interesting. So go for it.
No, I was about to say, well, basically the rest of my career had that common thread in it. So I've had quite a few jobs. I've actually worked in 9 organisations in 6 industry sectors now. So I'm looking back, but there's been a common thread to having a human resources development, people development focus in really all the roles I've had, and that's been my core, if you like. Yeah,
and I'm interested to dig into that core while digging into and maybe starting with. The idea, I think you said you had 9 different. So what does that look like for, I mean, there's so much pressure on sometimes students thinking about what's that first job I'm going to get outside of university, or even some people out there who are in a job and they're like, I've been in this for a while. Like, I don't know if can I change? Am I too old? Am I too young? Am I too experienced? Am I too inexperienced? What was it? What do you think the market says? Like,
exactly. After a while, I mean, after your first job, you have experience. So you don't take your next job basically at an entry level. You can go in. I found myself going in at a higher level in other jobs because HR, probably marketing would be like that, engineering. So it's one of those specialty areas that you can transfer across organizations. So you're not restricted to one organization. So my career path was kind of a bit like that, but it was kind of a trajectory that went upwards, but I was able to sort of build on what I had before. So I leveraged off the skills that I picked up in that previous role. I mean, I'm looking back, I learned a lot, but when you're in it at the time, it feels like you feel like you're trapped. You feel like, if you're not happy in your job, then your personal life is not too good as well, because everything sort of interacts. I don't know if you found that when you were doing your first graduate program.
Yeah, big time. And that was the main reason I kind of left. Like, my personal life was always my litmus test for when it was the right time to leave jobs. Like, when I realized that and it's completely on me, but when I realized I was letting the effect of my inability to take control of my professional life in a way that was true to my purpose and mission, when I was letting that frustration not come out at work and then come out at home or in just ways that, like, when I was alone, I was frustrated, or I'd come home and vent to my partner, be like, this person's an idiot, and she'd kind of be like, can everyone be an idiot? Or maybe, so I had those moments where I had to be like quite honest with myself. And I think that's a really great point, of maybe one that I've not articulated before, of using that personal life of going, if you've got mud, the phrase, like, if you've got mud on your boots and you come home, some of you're going to wipe some of it off. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want something where I'm getting muddy boots metaphorically every day. I want something where I'm like, I come home and I'm like, oh, this happened. I met this person. We did this and we're working on this project. And that change has been.
It does. It makes a huge difference to your identity as well, I think, as well.
Massive.
Yeah,
Talk to me
because
about identity. Talk to me about identity as you change different career paths. How do you actually form an identity if you're doing lots of different things?
yeah, and look, and as I said, there's been a commonality, I think, as I said, in terms of the paths I've had. I've worked in the newspaper media. I was actually at the head office of Herald Sun in Melbourne,
Yep.
and I was the HR training manager there. So I worked with really creative types, journalists, advertising execs, and then right to printers who in their blue overalls covered in ink. So it was, I enjoy organisations that have a lot of diversity, I think, of people, and that's been a really interesting thing. I'd sort of gravitate to organisations that do allow that diversity. But coming back to identity, you'll notice, even in my LinkedIn headline, I don't have my current job title in there. I mean, I have it in my experiences, obviously, because I'm currently working at the University of Melbourne in careers, but I don't have it in my headline because I don't think that I don't want to be identified by any particular one role. But so I have in my headline a number of functional areas that I like to specialize in, and that helps me guide my future. So if I'm looking at something that fits into one of those areas, I know that's going to be more for me. So yeah, so I'm not a fan of putting job titles in LinkedIn profiles, but I mean, I understand there's a role for it, obviously, early in your career where obviously that could help. So but identity, I think identity is more about purpose and more about what your passion is rather than your current job title or your current situation, even if you're out of work. Never be defined by anything like that.
So I like that idea of not being defined by a job title. It's very much akin to my whole ethos of leadership being about service and what you do and what you give to the world. Interesting when you were saying like it's your LinkedIn job title are functional areas, which is what you're interested in, and then to be slightly more defined by what you're passionate about. And then lots of students will often say, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And I guess today what I'm really interested to dig into a little bit around the value of trying different things is how do you know if you're, maybe it's one way to approach it. If you're a student, how would they know if they've tried enough things or if they've not tried enough things? Because my personal experience is the gross majority of students just haven't done enough things yet. Like I was the same when I was at university. Like I didn't know this is what I was interested in. Like even though I had 10 volunteering roles and a whole bunch of part-time jobs, like I hadn't found that thing that I was really into until I really found student societies, which was like my 9th or 10th volunteering role on top of all these part-time jobs at the end of a degree. And even then I was like, this isn't a job. And then I had to create one. But
and that's exactly right. And then some people will actually do that. They will say, look, that's it. My destiny is to create my own business like you've done and decide that it's the way to go. And I meet many students in my role who have done some tremendous stuff in social enterprise, startups. One particular student at Swinburne, we started an app and it went international. He's made a lot of money out of it, but that's not the norm. I mean, you don't have to, you're not going to make a lot.
They're the extreme outliers, though. That's the problem, right? Yeah,
exactly. But you do meet them, and it's interesting. But it's I think it's a matter of trying different things. I mean, I will meet students who absolutely, like you said, they not have had any experience outside their degree. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, at that stage, then it prompts them into action. But I think the more you try, the better you're able to identify what your strengths are. Professor John Krumboltz at Stanford came up with this term called the planned happenstance, which is really just about dealing with change in a rapidly changing world and then being in the right place, maybe at the right time. So the way you change is to actually identify networking events that you want to attend, to identify where do you want to work and sort of go into those premises. I used to do that too. I just knocked on doors. I mean, I did my first radio program when I was 15, and there was a radio show where you could make your own programs. The ABC had a show and I just walked into the office in the city one day and just knocked on their door and said, I'm interested in making a radio program. What do I do next? And before I knew it, I had my own program on a Sunday night. And it was it wasn't advertised. I mean, what I'm getting at, I try to tell students, don't wait for an opportunity to be advertised. You've got to go for it. You've got to knock on their door. You've got to be standing in the place where the decision makers are going to be. And I think that's a really key thing because you get well known by your reputation and your interests. And that's created on social media, of course, as well. But it's also created with your personal presence and how you deal with people.
Yes.
So indecision, my key point, I think, is indecision can be desirable and sensible. It's not a bad thing to be undecided because people we're undecided right throughout our lives in many ways. I mean, it's not going to be clear, 100% clear, and it doesn't need to be. But you pick out the best of what you've gained, and you take that with, it's like a bucket. You're filling the bucket with the things you want to take with you, and you empty the bucket of things you don't want to take with you into the future. So the bucket doesn't become too heavy. You're not pulling this bucket with all this bad stuff you don't want to carry forward. And you soon decide what that is. I mean, it's hard at the time, but on looking back, you can quickly decide what that is. And that's what I've done.
I like the metaphor of like filling the bucket with things that are desirable. So maybe if you're listening along at home, and I know that a lot of the times when I hear people refer other people to listen and tune into the show, they go, oh, it's 30 minutes of professional development at 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you're crazy and this is your idea of a good time and you like doing 30 minutes of professional development in the morning, one, I'm glad you're here. And I say crazy affectionately. Two, something maybe practical you could do is just take a quick moment, and we're going to tee up a guest here. Sang's going to come on and join us in a second, just for a wee moment. But take a moment to think about some of your previous roles, whether it's volunteering, part-time jobs you've done on campus, and if you're graduated and you're in the workforce, jobs that you did a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and think about, if you use that metaphor of the bucket, what's in that bucket that you want to keep in that bucket. I'd love you to think of a couple of things, and maybe it's a takeaway task as well. But then think of some things are there a couple of things rattling around in that bucket that it's about damn time you took them out of the bucket. Because I know for me, there were some things I had in the bucket that I was carrying around forever. And it was a little bit of identity. It was me going, oh, but I'm the engineer. When am I going to go back to engineering? And I was like, it's okay to go. My change in thinking was, I didn't become an engineer. I developed engineering skills. And when I started looking at myself as someone who had a bunch of different skills, and I could point me at anything, whether it was fundraising or TEDx or nonprofit or recruitment, I became much more aligned with those skills. And I know you said be aligned with your strengths and not your job title. And so that helped me go, oh, I can recraft and create an identity using my strengths as a launching pad, not as a jail that says you're a this, you can't be a this. So if you are listening and tuning in, I'd love for you to think, what's in your bucket that you want to keep in the bucket, become more conscious of it, and then what's in the bucket that it might be about time you take out. Warren, when we bring back from chatting with Sang, I really want to understand, and I want to chat to you about that metaphor a little bit more, especially how do you take things in and out, and what does that process look like? For joining us very quickly, love hearing the student voice, we have the amazing Sang.
Hi.
Sang, how you doing?
Hi, Sam.
Good to be here.
How are you today?
I'm good. To be honest, this coffee with you has been like one thing that I'm really looking forward to, like really motivate me.
Oh, thank you. Oh, we're glad you're here. Now it's coffee with all of it, so we're all in it together, Sang.
Yeah.
Sang, do you have a question, thought, comment? What's on your mind?
Very, like the first one is like when you said, identity is not defined by what you do, but the purpose that you're working. So recently, so for me, I changed, I was a teacher before, back in my home country, Myanmar, and then I decided that I do want to explore what I want to do. So I moved here in Australia last year, and now it's just like over a year, and then now I completely changed, like even my study, and now I'm in the middle of crossroad what I want to do, or like asking myself like the path that I want to follow. And listening to this has been really motivating me to do things that I'm scared of doing. And when you said it is okay to explore as many options as I can, but sometimes I have that feeling of guilt, like is it okay, like am I wasting time, or so guilt. So how can I overcome that and then really explore and put all the effort into it?
Yes. Warren, do you have any thoughts there?
Well, thanks for joining us, by the way. And I meet a lot of students who are doing the masters in teaching and wanting to do different things. And I also worked in industry training and development, and I actually saw a lot of people who are teachers who wanted to move into the corporate training area and made a transition wonderfully because their skills were highly transferable. They knew how to develop a curriculum. They knew how to stand up and deliver. And all those things, and all they had to do was learn about the products and services of the organisation, but they had a lot of skills ready to go. So I think it's amazing, and obviously Josh done some, Teach for Australia. He can obviously talk about your experience there. But I think teaching is a great communication area of skills where you can transfer it into many, many different areas. And so, I don't think there's any such thing as putting your toe in bad water or hot water and getting burnt. I think every experience is going to be of value to you.
Right.
I like that. Saying, when you said you're more motivated or maybe perhaps confident leaning into that thing you're afraid of, what is that thing? Like, what's that thing that you want to chase?
One thing is, I'm like so introvert and I'm so scared of meeting new people and talking to them. So since I arrived here and I joined Study Melbourne, and I've been really putting myself out and talking to strangers and greeting them. And then the pandemic hits, and then but yeah, that's why I'm trying to be active in even the webinar, online webinar. I try to really put my ideas, and yeah, that's one thing.
So putting yourself out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're doing that. And what are you doing that for? Like, what's that thing you're chasing?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Is there something in particular when you're like, I'm afraid to do the things I want to do? So that, I guess, the action you're taking is putting yourself out there and speaking to people. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel that you're looking for? Like, do you know, is there a particular thing that you want to, a job you want to do or become, or an industry you want to work in, a sort of person or cause you want to help? Do you have clarity on that just yet?
I don't really have a very clear one yet, but I do find that I do like to, because when I'm inspired and then that feeling, this is what I need, and then at the same time, this is what I want to do. I want to inspire people because this is so great. For example, you even all the workshops that I've been attending, and it's really inspired me and empowered me to do something.
Yes.
So not just inspired and sit down and finish, but it really empowered me to do things. And then I really like that, and I also want to be that person.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just say inspiring is a word that's used a lot, but I think even in the job I hated, I found moments where I could inspire people. I was dealing with customers in a retail branch, and I could inspire in some ways, and that's what I took forward with me. It was all the administrative stuff I left behind, and I took that further with me. But I've been in very uncomfortable situations too. Now, you talked about being courageous to go out and maybe meet people. I was thrown into a role, I guess, very deep end. Sort of at the age of 28, I was management development trainer in an organisation, and I'm training managers twice my age. And I had to have a degree of credibility there, but that just happened. by throwing myself into it, I had to develop that. So look for opportunities where you can be uncomfortable and kind of, I know it's a cliche, but somebody embrace that uncomfortability, because that in there you will find your silver lining once you get in there.
I love it. And if I can leave you with one more thing, saying one of the things that I think your insight is so good here of it's what we always try to do in workshops, and why I'm so glad you've been so active, is to give you space to step away from the busyness and just go, what am I kind of doing all this for? And where am I at? And to move you to contemplate and think. I think so. You are very inspired. You are going after it. I think you're doing a lot of amazing things. Two really practical things that I might suggest. If you don't know necessarily what that next step is, be around people who do. Be around people who have a purpose, have a mission. So how do you do that? Find them on LinkedIn and send them a message. Read the articles, listen to the podcast, watch the TED Talks. You got to seek through. You got to be smart. You got to put the filter on, because some people give a TED Talk about something that's the opposite of what they actually do. But find people who are really into what they're doing. Go down the rabbit hole. So for me, if I hear someone on a podcast and I like them, I'll go and see if they've done a TED Talk, or I'll go and read all their books, or I'll go to their website and I'll just learn all about them. And then what I kept finding was, after I did that enough times, people who knew what they were doing just had a common theme. And so that thing that came out for me was that it was about serving somebody else. wasn't about themselves. So one would be find people who know what they like, be around them, whether it's physically or read the books, just understand what they think. And the second thing is be around other people who are curious and who are creating and actually doing. So the Study Melbourne Leadership Labs is a great place where I know you're really active at the moment, but whether that's networking events, whether that's volunteering, whether that's community centers, whether it's on or off campus, places where people are coming together and they as a group are defining what's valuable to them. Because where the situation you're in, I think saying right now is it's really interesting from an educational perspective. The classroom, there's a teacher who has the right answer and there's a student, and it's your job to get the answer in the back of the book correct. You know, they are the source of knowledge. Student is attested whether they get it right or not. Sports is similar, except you're in a group. You know, if you're playing basketball, you get 2 points if you throw it in the hoop, 3 points if you're outside the circle. You know, there's rules. And at the end of the game, somebody wins. And you can rank the teams. So there's a right and a wrong. You're just doing it in a group. What's hard about a career is if you don't go down the traditional path, you're in a situation where it's like individualistic, but values-based, where you're deciding what's valuable in your life. And I often get students in workshops. I'm like, just turn to the back of your notepad for a second. You'll notice there's no answers there. And people are like, oh, I'm on my own, you know? So what's hard about that situation is there isn't a right answer for you. There's one Seng Dui. And it's up to you to figure out, if you go down this route, what you think is valuable and why. And so one of the ways to be in that category is learn about lots of other people, try a bunch of things. And one thing that's really helped me is getting around other people and then taking a long-term view of going, like with Warren's example before of, if you're listening at the start, I was really interested in HR and I found an efficient route to get there. Whereas like, I didn't know what I wanted. So for me, I just went and tried stuff, you know, worked at a restaurant, worked at a bar, worked as a tour guide, worked in education. I just tried. And then I found a few things and I was like, oh, I like that. Put that in my bucket. Oh, I like that. Put that in my bucket. And then after a while, I had this bucket of stuff and I just sort of shook it around and was like, you know, hopefully a job will pop out of this. And for me, you call it the universe or whatever you want. For me, with the best intent to help and a bucket full of stuff from actually doing, campus kind of emerged. Pure luck and serendipity in terms of circumstance, but there were enough good things in the bucket and I just had an intention to help and something came my way. So I know with you, and you've got a massive heart and you want to lead and inspire and empower others as well. My hope would be that out of your bucket of skills, keep adding to it and then keep shopping it around.
Great.
You're awesome, Seng. I'll see you on Friday.
Yeah.
I'll see you there.
Thanks for joining us. It's great. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you for your time, guys.
Of course. Thanks for joining us, Seng. We'll see you on Friday.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. It's great to bring the student in, Josh. It's great to see their perspective, and you can see that's a good example of someone who's trying to maybe look at alternatives and what inspires is that key thing that's underlying teaching or any education role. It's about inspiration at the end of the day, isn't it? Inspiring. I think inspiring is about breathing life, I think is the original meaning of the word.
That's the root word of it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's about being courageous, isn't it? Being curious, being adaptable, all those good things. And remember, you know, there'll be jobs will come and go in the future. Organizations will come and go. There'll be a lot of disruption in the future. There'll be things that, you know, newspaper media disappeared and it's going online. So when I was in that industry, I saw a total disruption of the industry. So that's going to happen right throughout your life in some form or another. So it's constantly reinventing, but really enjoying that, not seeing that as a chore, but you know, the number of contacts I have now, having different experiences, is quite phenomenal. The people I can now refer to, and I can tell, I used to work with them in a previous role. I worked with them in another organisation. So it's you create this big network, and it's just great.
I agree. That idea of disruption too is really interesting. Of, you know, so many of the recent roles I've had literally didn't, like, I graduated in 2013, which I used to say this in like 2017. I'm like, I graduated 4 years ago, but now I say I graduated 7 years ago. It kind of loses its shine. But it's true then. Like, a lot of the roles I had simply didn't exist. My big trick with students, as you say, is like try to create your own role. And sometimes if it's an app that goes international, I love that advice. But other times I think there's a business, and this is a crucial thing for students, we always try to underscore. At university, you pay to be there. You're a customer. We love you. We want you to keep coming. We believe in the product and the service, but you pay to be there. Stop paying your fees, see what happens. You're a customer. There's nothing wrong with that. when you're in the workplace, you're an employee and you're paid to be there. The dynamic is totally shifted. The difference with that is when you're at university, you're paying for a thing and you might want other things, but if that's not what you're paid for, like you've got some negotiation power, but it's limited. In the workplace, you're paid to be there, but ultimately now as an employer, you're paying staff to get a result that's aligned with your mission of your organization. If they've got another way to further your mission and it's slightly different to what your original job title is, there's so much room to wiggle and pivot if you want to be creative and iterate and disrupt in a meaningful way on the job. So I like that idea of, you can create something, but you can also do this internally. You can have lots of different career paths within one organization or within one industry and sort of bounce around a little bit, learn from the best and go, I like, with engineering, there was a big one of, some guys I loved being out on site, like the actual on-site bit. Other guys loved being in the office at the computer. And so it was like our day-to-day lives are so different. Like I'm kicking around, like we wear different clothes. I'm in boots and mud and sunscreen and others would be in the air conditioning. And that was fine,
I know. You got to wear different faces, don't you? And sometimes you go, especially in the newspaper industry, I'd be at the midnight shift printing the Herald Sun, so I'd be in blue overalls. And that's the only way I could relate to these guys. And then I was back in the advertising team the next day and I had to be, it was kind of, what hat am I wearing today?
Yeah, and I like the variety of that because that lets you say, well, and I'd always go, and now what I've learned to ask is, okay, at the end of this sort of day, whatever day I've crafted, did I enjoy that? Is that the kind of day I like? And if I get to the end of the day, I'm like, I like at 8 a.m. chatting to someone amazing and having a conversation. I'm like, I should keep that as part of my life. And it's maybe in your metaphor, that's a ball in the bucket for me.
Exactly. I was about to say that's what you take forward with you, and then you decide what you want to let go, and then leave off from there. But it's an amazing, a lot of disruption going on there. And I hear, the Australia Post is now looking at maybe delivering once or twice a week, so that's going to affect mail deliveries in the future. There's a whole lot of major, and Australia Post has been around for over 200 years. It's had to reinvent itself, and sort of all hit at once. But that's what I found in the banking industry. A lot of the stuff that had been around for a long time, and then all of a sudden there's this massive shift where new technology comes in, and it just changes the whole ball game. It's like you change one piece on the chessboard, and the whole game changes. It's a bit like that. But enjoy it. I mean, it's going to be an interesting ride in the future. This is the 21st century, folks, and it's going to be. We don't know what it's going to look like, and that's the exciting part about it.
I think so too. I agree, and that thinking of it as a bit of a journey of an adventure is for me, it's all the fun of it. That's the entire game. Warren, I love digging into this with you. Given that you've got a wealth of experience, you've done this for a long time and helped a lot of people. Are there any things that you think that we haven't touched on today that you think are really important that we should touch on in terms of the value of trying lots of different things in your career?
Yeah, well, I think it was touched on by the previous student that came in. The courage to do things is once you overcome that. I mean, it's the ability to knock on a door in a large city building where you've never walked in before, being able to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Warren. I want to make a radio program. What? You want to make one? Yeah, that's what I want to do. So we'll introduce you to the right person for that. I think that's important. Go ahead. I love writing articles. I've really had a passion for journalism. I joined the media industry because I wanted to sort of working with journalists. So I've never been a journalist as such, but I love writing. I've done freelance writing, and I've written 70 articles on LinkedIn. So I'm just adding to my pile there. I just love it. I do. Someone said to me, "Do you get paid to do this?" I said, "No, LinkedIn don't pay me to write articles. I just do it because I love it. I really enjoy it." And so I do something like that. So even if you're not getting paid to do something, you can still follow your passion in things around your work as well. I think that's an important thing.
100%. It's this show. Like I haven't signed on with NBC to produce a morning show on LinkedIn. LinkedIn hasn't endorsed it in any way, but like that's part of the. I love that idea of doing something for the fun of it. And I often one of those interesting things of if you're a student. I mean, we talked about this yesterday on the show. One of the tips was like start something. Like whether it's a radio show, like you can do it all from your phone. Like you can have a podcast on Spotify and iTunes by the end of the week using just your iPhone for $0. Yeah. Like it can be, I'll look at some of the people who've kind of commented this morning, like Lizzie's jumped on. It could be lunch with Lizzie. And every day at lunch, Lizzie sits down and records her thoughts, It's like Yasvin's jumped on. It can be your next step with Yasvin, and it's going around talking to people about what they took their next step in their career. Jay's hard. We've got Joanne on here, but it can be like Jobs with Joanne, and it's interviewing people who are in an industry you're interested in. Now, the reason I do that is be smart about it. Like the people I like to bring on this show, and I'm sure Warren with the articles that you write, like it's aligned to what we do. So I bring people on who have really interesting insights. And then when I put all those insights together, like an individual who watches all these episodes, like there's a lot to learn, and it surrounds all the areas we're interested in: careers, leadership, entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence. So Warren, when it comes to writing articles, and that must take an amount of time. I've written a couple, and I know it takes quite a bit of time, especially to put out something good. Where do you think where does that fit in that balance between you do it just because you love it, and it's also really great for like your brand and what you do and your sort of learning and development?
Yeah, look, it helped me continue to learn, because when you're writing an article, you have to know what's going on in your field. You need to know what's going on in the latest book. Perhaps you need to quote from the latest material I've read. I know you can quote from people as long as you acknowledge the source, and then that just weaves into the story I write. It's like having a coffee, like this is a coffee meeting. You know, you just have a coffee with someone and you're telling your story. Just to tap that on a keyboard and it becomes an article, and then it gets picked up by ethicaljobs.com.au. I met the guy in a queue, standing in a queue one day, and he said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I've read one of your articles," and so he now puts some ethical jobs. And so you never know where these things are going to end up. You never know who's reading stuff, and you just never know who's around. I mean, you can meet anybody at all, and with LinkedIn, it's fantastic because you can actually message people directly, which is great. But you've got to have the courage, I think, and just to be able to, as you say, try things, do things, and mix with people that you may not always want to mix with. So if you're a HR person, for example, go along to the Engineering Students Society and see what they're doing, because you might find some commonality between the two. And I'm sure you do this in your work with student clubs, trying to get the areas mixing together, because they know there's a lot of commonalities in leadership and so on, which transcend the actual discipline of the student association or club. But I'm always a great fan of recommending students to join clubs, and I know I'm speaking to the converted here with Josh, but I find it would be so invaluable. I'm sure you've seen students grow and develop in the time you've seen them tremendously, and that must be extremely inspiring for you, I would imagine.
It is, and the club space is one that I'm so passionate about, and I'll say it now, and I'll bang this drum until the day I die. Clubs are massively underappreciated in the university space. I think they're the lifeblood of it, and we are going to see increasingly over the next few years the financial value of clubs be proven again and again. Like, we know it works. I get messages every day like, I joined this club and then I got this job. Like, it's how I got my job. Like, we just see it working. But I think even from a university, from a bottom line perspective, we just know that clubs are so valuable. And from a student well-being perspective, student growth, community connection, it's everything it's the life. I think it's in a lot of ways the ethos of universities. And when there aren't thriving club scenes or college scenes or community mentorship, when you lose that connection, it feels transactional, and that's not the beauty of university. So they're a great place to go and experiment. So if you're a student out there and you're listening, today is not too late to join a club. There are club leaders at any university, whether it's your faculty, whether it's the vegan club, whether it's the Frisbee club, the Bitcoin club, whatever you're into, and they're all sitting around hoping new people sign up. So sign up to a club today. You won't regret it. And a bit of planned happenstance, you might bump into the next person who gives you a job, which is what happened to me at a club thing that I was doing. So
absolutely. And if I just wear my university hat for a moment, Josh, and the careers side, students need to wear careers services as well in their universities. And I think, again, you attend a workshop on a Zoom meeting or even in a lecture theatre, you'll meet other students that are outside your area as well. So, attend the workshops, the careers and employability workshops. Most universities run them. Most universities have one-on-one consultations with students. So make sure you look up those, because you'll find a lot of ways to connect to industry. A lot of industry partners come on campus right throughout the year. And please attend those, because you get to meet people who are decision makers who can hire. They might not hire you on the spot, but you've started a relationship. You've introduced yourself at least, and you know what their hiring process is all about, and you know how to meet them, and maybe in a networking function in the future. Mentoring is another great thing. I just want to speak. The idea of having a mentor is fantastic. I wish I had had a mentor. I wish I didn't have a mentor at a young age, but I just think it's a fantastic thing. Have you had a mentor? I'm sure you have, Josh, or at least.
Only my definition of a mentor is anyone who can relay principles and show you how to apply them. I never had anyone in a formal role. I had a couple of teachers who sort of fit that role. No one really formal, not until I was much, much older. And then it's amazing. You go to a mentor with a problem and they're like, have you thought about this? You're like, no, like, think about that. And it's like, okay. And it's like, it's so often there's one question and it just opens your mind to.
It's a good idea. And I mean, friends are mentors too, to some extent, but sometimes friends have their own interest in mind. So a mentor is someone like a little bit outside that relationship, and they can give you some really interesting feedback that a friend might not want to upset you and withhold all the negative stuff. But the mentor is great for that. So there's so go to your university mentoring program. Check them all out, because there's a lot of mentoring programs available through a number of universities. So yeah, that's just on the university side of things, and obviously Josh is complementing a lot of stuff with what you're doing with campus consultancy. So there's so much going on. It's a great sector. I'm sure it will thrive in the future, no matter what form it might look like. There's a lot of debate about what universities are going to offer in the future, but the education and self-development is something that is core to the human nature. I think it's always going to be around. And it's just something you just keep growing and developing. And so it's one thing about life is that you end up dying at the end. Wouldn't it be great if you started off at the other end of your life and came all the way back? You'd bring all that experience with you, and to a younger age where you can actually be fit enough to actually apply everything. But it's an interesting time to be alive, I think, as one of their prime ministers said at one stage. But it really is a good time to be here. I think a lot of changes happened over 100 years or so. But I think a lot of change. And I think we're all going to be, you and I, Josh, and everyone watching, are going to have a story to tell the next generation. We lived through 2020 when there was this pandemic. And this is what happened to us. We've got a story to tell.
And that's half the reason, that's part of the reason of doing this. I'm going to show all these episodes to a kid or a grandkid or an adopted child in 15 years, and when they come home from school and I'm done with the empathy bit, and I'm like, okay, I understand you've had your problems, whatever. And I'm like, well, here, like, this was one of the hardest times, globally that I lived through. Here's what I did. Here's 40 hours of what I was thinking at the time. Because I'm like, imagine if you could sit down and be like, grandparents, great-grandparents in the war, like, what were you thinking? How did you handle that? Like, it's just way, I don't want to say it's way more. It's, I've not been physically affected by COVID in the way that grandparents had to go to war, is what I'm saying. But I just love to know what that's like. So that's part of this documenting your process. I want to answer Kashif saying Doy, I love this, has answered the question, like, what are you going to do something? I'm going to start my podcast this Friday, the doing part. So it's a very clever pun based on your last name, and I love that. The doing part, which is very, very cool. Fantastic. So that's cool. I want to see the doing part. And that's it. If you're like, well, how do I do the next thing? Find out what other people are doing. Kashif's jumped in and said, how do I find a mentor today? Kashif, knowing that you're at Charles Darwin University, couple of things. So Warren's at University of Melbourne, but you want to find the equivalent of Warren. So message the careers department, Google careers department, Charles Darwin University. Go to the university website and go in the search bar and type in mentoring. Go to your faculty, depending on what you're studying, and ask them, send a message to anyone, the contact email, do you have a mentoring program? And what you might find is they don't, and it might be Kashaf Mohammed starts the mentoring program for your faculty. So I'd be reaching out, try to find a staff member who might know, see if it already exists, but play around on Google, see if you can find it. Just your university plus mentoring program, see what pops up. And the other thing is, you were asking about how to find a club. Very similar thing. I actually think Sedusa, Charles Darwin Uni Student Association, might have closed down. But regardless, if it has closed down, one of the things that you can do is look for community organizations. You might find something like a Rotaract Club. You might find, I know there's Study NT, which supports international students. So you might go out and reach out to them, see if they have an ambassador program. But nothing stops you. I mean, a club is a group of people coming together. You might decide to start Kashif's club, and all of a sudden you're out there building a group of people and you do something good in the community. So really see if it already exists. And if it doesn't exist, don't be afraid to start something. Just like starting this idea of the doing part. Awesome. Warren, I love it. Thank you for your time today. You've been amazing. I think I asked you at 1:30. I'm like, is there anything else we want to cover? And we added 15 more minutes, which I love, but I want to be respectful of your time.
That's absolutely fine. I just think the other thing I just want to mention is reverse mentoring. Just reverse mentoring. So in other words, older people can learn a lot from students as well. So there's a great book I read called Wisdom at Work. Just to cut a long story short. Chip Connolly, 52 years of age, worked in hospitality. he worked with the founder of Airbnb. They both synergized together and they both created this amazing plan for Airbnb. So the founder, 28 techno wizard, knew all about the technology, brought this guy in who had worked in hospitality, many years of experience, worked together, gelled together nicely, and he called himself a mentern. So there we go. It's a new word, mentern.
I like it. Yeah, the Chip Conley is amazing. His book, I haven't read it yet. It's like, what is it? It's like mentor. It's
a story. Yeah, the one I read was Wisdom at Work, and he talks about his experience at Airbnb. Yeah, I think he's got another one too. Yeah,
he has another one. Something about mentorship in the modern age, or like being a sage or wisdom or something like that. I need to read it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah,
very cool. All right, Warren, you're amazing. Thanks for your time today, my friend. I appreciate everything you did.
Been absolute delight being here, and best wishes for the rest of your campus consultancy and all the webinars and things you run in the future.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate it.
We'll have a coffee meeting soon anyway.
I know. I'm excited. When we can have a coffee at the standing room or wherever we do it on campus, it's going to be great. For everyone else who doesn't need to know the details and when Warren and I are next going to catch up for a coffee, thank you for joining today and this morning. Thank you for all your comments. If you're interested in what Sang's doing with her new podcast, The Doing Part, reach out to Sang. If you know someone who's a doer, reach out to Sang. I'll put her contact details up on the screen here. If you know someone who's doing something epic, and Sang might be like, I'm going to get my own guests, leave me alone. But I'm going to throw some people your way anyway. If you know someone who's doing something cool in the world, send them towards Sang, have a conversation, see if they might be a good guest. If not, that's totally fine. But let's help Sang out as a bit of a community here. So check it out. Good luck, Sang. I'm excited to see your podcast. I promise I will listen in, rate, review, give you 5 stars, whatever needs to happen to boost you up the charts. And for everyone else who's tuned in, thank you for joining us. Don't be afraid to try a lot of new things. You never know your favorite flavor of ice cream until you try a bunch of different flavors of ice cream. So go out there, try something new, ask the ice cream server what their favorite flavor is and see what you end up with. Have an amazing Wednesday, and we'll see you all again tomorrow for episode 43.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye all.